Well, after a strong start, The Exorcist continues to show why it's one of the creepiest shows on TV, with a game-changing twist that takes the show in an entirely new direction.
Don't change the channel, don't touch that dial. We got it all on UHF. Take off your
Hey guys, it's Cameron for The Exorcist, Season 2, Episode 4, One for Sorrow, and holy shit, one episode. I mean, wow. This season has been really great, I definitely will say that, but I definitely didn't expect a twist this big to happen this early on, and I understand the show did something very similar to this last year when they had, at this point, I think we had the Regan twist and everything, that, Angela was actually Regan. We had that big twist. But that was something that, we'd already seen this show do. Like, we'd already seen the Regan character. I mean, it's not something I think we ever thought of happening. This, however, just came out of nowhere. It's nothing I ever really thought of, but let's just get into this episode because I definitely do want to talk about, because there's just so many places the show can go. Before we get to that, we have to talk about everything that happened this episode, which we start off in Antwerp, Belgium, with Mouse and Father Bennett's visit to the possessed Sister Dolores. Of course, that's where the last episode left off, and Sister Dolores tells Father Bennett the song that Mouse keeps playing, which is Jesus Loves Me. It isn't torture, she actually loves it, and Dolores asks Father Bennett to dance with her, and he's stunned, and, you get the sense that Dolores is clearly trying to lure him in or whatever. So on Knockburn Island, Washington, Rose borrows Andy's car to pick up Harper. Even though she's grateful, he's taking in the poor girl, and Rose reminds Andy that according to the rules, he needs another primary caregiver staying at the house. So basically, she's gonna now stay there, just because of the fact that there's just too many people, and just by law, she has to be there. So Andy tells the group about Harper and that Rose will be bringing her to live with them temporarily, and Verity isn't really happy that she'll have to share a room, and the group doesn't accept the news with open arms. I mean, this is how things have been for a very long time now, and now all of a sudden Rose is just coming in here and just, taking their place. I mean, they're just not really happy about that. The fact that she is, running things along with Andy, and Andy tells him a good family only gets bigger, asking if they understand what he's telling them, and Grace then runs from the room. Andy follows him. When he hears a door slam downstairs, he goes to investigate, and he finds Grace standing outside looking into the woods, and Grace says that she shouldn't be there, and then the door slams shut behind her, and Andy then comforts the young girl, saying that it was just the wind. However, it's obvious that he doesn't believe it. There's clearly something else out there, and we don't know what that's all about, but Father Tomas then calls his sister Olivia, and she's shocked to hear from him, and he won't say where he is, and to be honest with you, I didn't really know where Tomas and Marcus were going to go from here. I mean, obviously, Marcus and Father Tomas, they've been doing a lot of exorcisms throughout the season. They did the one with Cindy, and then, of course, they did the one with Harper last week where we found out that she wasn't actually possessed, so I didn't really know where it was going to go, but basically, he says that he won't say where he is, but he does ask after his nephew Luis, and it was Luis's birthday last week, and Tomas missed it, and Olivia then reveals a bunch of men claiming to be from the church visited her last week. She begs him to come home, but Tomas then hurries off the phone. He then destroys the phone's SIM card, that way she won't try to get there, which you can understand why. Obviously, it's not a safe area at all. He knows there's definitely probably more possessions out there, and he really wants her to get as far away from there as possible. So back inside their hotel room, he bandages Marcus's wounds while repeating his conversation with Olivia, and Father Bennett hasn't contacted Marcus, so they're not really sure about their next move. What do they really do next? And they have a restrained but angry conversation about God and whether he's leading them in a specific direction, with Marcus insisting that he isn't. He's really starting to lose hope that maybe they don't really have a direction, and Tomas admits that he was wrong about Harper. Marcus says that maybe he was just wrong about God, and he asks Tomas if he heard anything from God, saying that he hasn't, and you can really tell Marcus is starting to lose faith here because they're not really getting anywhere, they're not making much progress, and it just doesn't really seem like anything's working out for them. And I someone like Marcus, who is so determined and has really kept his faith throughout his years, seeing him start to lose it, it's very sad to see, but it's really good progression for the character here. So wildlife biologist Peter Morrow gathers some of the dead birds from Andy's front yard, and Andy says he got rid of 30 of them yesterday, and Peter confirms that they all died quickly of broken necks, and he blames the birds' deaths on global warming, saying that it messes with their GPS, and Shelby then asks about the deformed baby lamb, and Shelby, you can tell he's really starting to catch on what's going on. Like, he knows very well yeah, there's definitely some shit going down, and it's nothing to sneeze at. There's definitely something going on here, and we should definitely be doing something about it. So basically, he asked about the deformed baby lamb. Peter says that happens. He also says he'll take some samples and check the island. However, he doesn't think it's worth losing sleep over. So he's acting like it's a completely normal thing. Shelby's not buying it for a second, though, because after Peter leaves, Andy tells Shelby it's not omens, just science, and Shelby admits he's scared, and Andy claims that they're safe, that they really have nothing to worry about here. It seemed like he was starting to catch on, but now it seems like that's not the case, and I have a theory for why that is, but I'm not going to talk about it again until the end of the episode because of what ends up happening. But Rose then brings Harper to see Marcus and Father Tomas at the hotel, and Harper gives Marcus a huge hug, and Rose quietly tells Father Tomas that Harper kept asking for them and wouldn't leave the hospital until Rose promised that they were seeing the priests, mainly because of how big of a help they were for her. And you can understand, I mean, someone like Harper, who's probably just had, just this recurring abuse gone on throughout her life, and just so much mistreatment from her mother, just constantly getting beaten on, it's just, it's a relief to finally be gone, and Marcus and Father Tomas are really the cause of that. So obviously, naturally she's going to be happy to see them, and I've really enjoyed watching that here, and you can tell it does give them a little bit of hope, realizing that no, there wasn't a possession going on, and yes, Father Tomas was wrong about that, but they did make this little girl happy, and they really did change her life for the better. So, back in Belgium, Mouse explains that dust on the floor is ground from the bones of saints, and the circle of dust weakens Sister Dolores, and Mouse confirms the demon has integrated into the sister, and Father Bennett raises a cross. He tries to exorcise her, but Mouse makes him stop suddenly, and Mouse knows Sister Dolores is gone, and exorcising the demon won't bring her back, and the reason Mouse is keeping Sister Dolores alive is because the demon knows the names of those who've infiltrated the Vatican, and that's how Mouse found out about Cardinal Gilot. So, Sister Dolores, at least I got the sense that she's probably been possessed for a very long time now, but they can use her not as an adversary, but actually as a valuable asset. Who would have thought that, something like, someone who's possessed could actually be an asset to them, but in this case, she really could be. So Father Bennett swears he's seen a person come back from integration, telling Mouse about the Rands case in Chicago, and Mouse says that the demons have been talking and now she knows the rumors are true, but she also reveals Father Tomas and Marcus have kicked up a hornet's nest, warning Marcus they're turning exorcists and killing the ones that they can't turn, and Mouse says the war is already here, and the exorcists are simply losing. It's really not working out for them. So if Bennett, if Father Bennett really was to try to bring, Sister Dolores, try to give her an exorcism, it most likely wouldn't work. And we've already seen this with Father Tomas and Marcus. It isn't working for them. It might not work for Bennett either. I don't know, something about Mouse, though, I just am really not trusting her at this point. I don't know what it is, but it just seemed like she has some sort of ulterior motives, and Zuleikha Robinson's doing a really great job as this character, but there's a lot of red flags being pointed towards her, and I really do hope the show continues to explore that. So Father Tomas, Marcus, Rose, and Harper arrive on the island as the kids, with the exception of Grace play outside. Grace wants a tea party with Andy all to herself. She thinks Andy loves the other kids best, and Grace starts yelling that she doesn't want to someone only she sees by her bed, and Andy then asks who she's talking to, and I got the sense that, again, this is like sort of like a Captain Howdy stranger situation, like what Casey had last year. This is what's happening with Grace, is that Grace is in the process of getting possessed, but she answers that there's no one, so the table moves and the tea set then falls to the floor. And at this point, I was just like, if they're actually going that direction, it's good. It's just very predictable, and it would have seemed like that's the direction the show is going to go in here. But again, we're going to come back to that a little bit later. But Rose tries to assure Harper that everything will be okay, and that Andy's place is a really special home. So Grace then stays inside on the steps, heading to the second floor. She's wearing her special Brave face pillowcase head, and while Andy and the rest of the kids are outside to greet Harper, Andy then introduced himself to Harper. Marcus and Tomas and spies something strange in the nearby trees. They exchange looks while Andy asks if it's true Harper loves to paint, and it is true, and she agrees to help him paint later. So, like I said, I really love the way everything's kind of coming together here, and everyone's really starting to meet each other. So, Andy introduces Verity to Harper, asking her to show Harper to their room, and Andy then finally greets Father Tomas and Marcus, calling them Harper's heroes, and that's essentially what they are. Grace, meanwhile, she's still inside all by herself. There are different items in the house. They're beginning to move on their own. She watches terrified, heads back to her room as a window breaks, and again, I saw this as she is in the process of getting possessed, and it would have made sense, because again, this little girl is extremely creepy, and I really thought that she was going to get possessed in this episode, but Andy gives Marcus and Tomas a grand tour of the house and on the yard, and Marcus tells Andy a story about when he lived in a home with 150 other boys as a kid, and he then glances down, he sees a dead bird, and Andy explains that crows dive bomb the house, and Marcus spots the webbing in the trees again, and Verity then tells Harper the shower's hot, the Wi-Fi is patchy so it's hard to stream, and that Andy is a fair to decent cook. She also says he's relatively woke and he's safe, and she tells him that no one's gonna hurt her anymore, not here, and I don't know about that. I would take that with a grain of salt if I were to Harper, because that definitely there's something going on for sure. There's definitely something weird going on. So she again gives Harper a lamp she made for her that changes colors and can be controlled with a remote control, and Harper then smiles for the first time since she's been inside the house. And it's a really poignant moment, you know, this is not someone who was genuinely ever happy, you know, again, her mother was just constantly beating on her, so to see her actually smile, that was a really good moment. I really enjoyed that. But Father Tomas then watches from the doorway. He sees a painting vibrating on the hall wall, and what he doesn't see is Grace. In her brave face, she's standing in another doorway watching him, and when he turns, she's already gone. And at this point, I'm like, what the hell's going on here? But the ending, again, really, a lot of things made sense after that. So Father Tomas is still in the hallway when Shelby greets him, says he's a believer, but not a Catholic. Apparently, he believes in God, but he's just not a Catholic. So Shelby wonders why they're here, and Tomas says that it was to accompany Harper, but Shelby doesn't really feel that way, because again, Shelby's starting to get very suspicious that something's going on. So Rose interrupts to tell Father Tomas that Marcus is looking for him, and back in the living room, Father Tomas confesses to Marcus that he got a feeling from one of the kids that there's something wrong here. He also feels it himself, and he's wondering if he was right about Harper in the first place, that maybe there is something very wrong about Harper. Maybe Harper is the key to all of this. So Marcus then heads outside to look around. He comes upon Peter taking samples from a dead deep water fish that shouldn't have washed up on the island, and Marcus asks about the dead birds, and Peter figures that Marcus isn't from around these parts, and Marcus explains that he bought Andy's new foster child, Harper, and Peter asks if he's one of the priests, and Marcus says that he used to be. So this is very interesting. You can tell Peter may possibly be onto them. We don't know what's really going on here, but they know very well that there is definitely something else out there, and this is absolutely far from over. So Sister Dolores then shakes as she listens to Jesus Loves Me. Father Bennett turns the music off. He asks the demon its name. It gives it, and Father Bennett says that's a beautiful name, and he then asks if Dolores can give him a sign that she's still in there, and the demon then spits in his face. It says the days of the Exorcist are over, and Father Bennett gives it a drink of water. Then it warns him that she is going to find him first. Now, who she is, I don't know. Actually, I might have an idea of who she might be at the end of this review, but the old gray lion and his little cub, and basically when Father Bennett asks who she is, the demon said that Father Bennett already knows her name, that he met her in Chicago, apparently. So I don't know if that has something to do with that woman Maria, because we know Maria, she's the one who started this cult and everything, but that's definitely interesting. But flames and lift off the floor, distracting Father Bennett as Sister Dolores picks up some of the ground dirt from the saints on the floor, tosses it in Bennett's face. He shrieks, falls to the ground, and then she drags him into the circle, begins beating him while cackling, and she says that she sends her regards. So Sister Dolores is choking Father Bennett when Mouse intervenes, injects Sister Dolores with holy water, and Mouse wants to know the identity of the lion and the cub, and Father Bennett says that it's Marcus and Father Tomas, apparently. So Mouse seems to recognize Marcus's name and asks if Bennett knows how to get in contact with them. So this is very interesting. Mouse actually immediately recognizes him, and he says he doesn't explain that they broke off contact, and she then wants to know about the group in Chicago, and Father Ben says it was controlled by the integrated body of Maria Walters. So yes, it definitely is about Maria, and he then adds they tried to integrate him too, but they unfortunately weren't, but not unfortunately, luckily they actually weren't successful. So Mouse wants to get her hands on a demon that powerful, believing they can get the names of those at the very top of the infestation, and Father Bennett does agree. So Peter tells Marcus the island's having problems with its fish and wildlife, and not just one farm, and Peter believes it might be a toxin, but admits the island has a lot of odd stories, and Peter asks why Marcus actually left the church, and Marcus says it was because of insubordination, and that he hasn't lost his faith, and Peter's doing a bit of flirting with Marcus, and the men have definite chemistry here. So Peter invites him for a sail to see a condor's nest that's off limits to everyone but fish and wildlife agents, and Marcus smiles and says maybe some other time. So I don't know if they're implying that Peter's gay or that Marcus is gay as well, but this is definitely very interesting here. So Rose is then saying goodbye, thanking Father Tomas when Andy stops him from leaving so he can witness a ritual upstairs. The entire group is gathered to watch Harper put her hand in red paint and then leave the print on the hall wall. So Andy says that now she's family, no matter what happens, she'll always have a home there. But again, it just all feels way too good to be true. And Father Tomas stands shocked, still staring at the handprints on the wall that match the ones on the outside of the church in his vision. So he sees this as an omen. Like, there's definitely something going on here, and there's a wicked presence there that clearly none of them know about. So definitely something's going on. But that night, Verity offers Harper nail polish. Harper admits she's never painted her nails, and Harper warns she's okay if she misses her mom. Verity assures her that even if she is a bitch, that is completely fine. So Andy and Rose then secretly watch from outside the room as Verity paints Harper's nails, with Andy happy that Verity really stepped up after Nikki's death. And Nikki and Verity really got each other, with Nikki loving her just the way she was, which we haven't really heard like a ton about Nicole, but we know all season long, like, Andy's been, at least for these first 4 episodes, Andy's been very much in grief about it, and Andy's happy to finally get to talk about his wife since no one mentions her name, and he says that when this is over, he'd like to see Rose again. So Rose is in bed that night when something wakes her. She sees someone staying in the dark in her room, calls out to see if it's Andy. It's not, but whatever it is, doesn't answer. So she tries to turn on the light by her bed. It refuses to come on. Instead, she grabs her phone, uses the flashlight to reveal nothing is in her room, and as she walks toward her bedroom door, she steps in what looks like a pool of blood, and Harper then screams and thrashes in her bed. Rose rushes in to wake her up. Harper says that it's her mom, and Rose is comforting her, saying it's just a dream. Harper asks her not to go, and Rose promises that she won't. Again, I think this is whatever the demonic presence is, it definitely is coming after them. We really are starting to see the beginnings of that here. So downstairs, a short while later, Rose and Andy are alone in the kitchen. Rose tells them that she had a nightmare and she doesn't want to talk about, but she then says that Harper cried herself to sleep, and after getting too attached to one kid last year, she can't afford to get attached to another one. So she also says that she should have kissed Andy back all those years ago, but she was with someone else, and she still wanted to be happy. He says that he was, and they share this very lengthy kiss, and it seems like all's good between Rose and Andy. They really have reconciled. They've put the bad blood between each other, and I definitely like seeing that. So Father Tomas and Marcus sit outside a bar. They discuss the handprints in the hallway over a beer, and Father Tomas believes that they must mean something, and he reveals he doesn't want them in his head. He doesn't understand what's going on. He asks if Marcus thinks God led them there, but Marcus says that God isn't talking to him anymore. He hasn't felt him for months, which is hard because he can't remember where he didn't feel him there. So he doesn't understand why he's not there anymore, but Father Tomas is concerned for his friend, and Marcus admits that he feels like an empty pitcher. He's worried that when the words run dry, nothing's gonna, he's gonna have no purpose. Nothing will become of him. He assures him that if that happens, he'll be there for him, and Marcus looks upset as he reveals that maybe Father Tomas wasn't sent by God to be his partner, but instead to be his replacement. He was actually supposed to take over for him, and it makes sense because if you think about Marcus, he was really the one that was like the main exorcist. He was the one that knew what he was doing. He's been working with the church since he was a young boy. I mean, this is something that he's always wanted to do, but now Tomas has kind of taken his place, and Tomas has much more advanced knowledge of this stuff, and he's, getting visions in his head, and Marcus just doesn't really have anymore. He's not even a part of the church, really, and he isn't sure what's going on, but he also agrees there's something wrong on the island. He tells him that he believes in God and that he believes in Tomas. So I really like seeing this. Again, we've had a lot of tension between these two throughout the season, but I really love the way that, Marcus is telling him, no, you're right, there's definitely some sort of presence here, definitely something isn't right, and again, I really enjoyed seeing that. But the next morning, then we get to this ending here, which this ending, oh my god, this, like I said, this really changes everything, because it starts out pretty normal. Grace and Annie are having breakfast in her room. She asks if she can be his favorite if she goes outside, and she calls him daddy, which was very interesting. So he carries Grace outside with her eyes closed. He promises her no more birds. She asks to be set down. They hold hands as she smiles and then take tentative steps away from him, and Verity then enters the house, calls out for Andy, saying she's sick for real this time and wants some soup. He's outside, doesn't hear her. Grace then runs around. She's acting like a kid, and Andy's very proud of her. He picks her up, they hug, and then she gets back on the ground so they can race around. And inside the house, Verity notices Andy outside, so they return to the house, and again, it seems like everything's fine, that Grace is there, and, she just doesn't want to disturb him. But they return to the house, and she tells him that they can now be together forever since she's able to go outside. He says first she has to take a nap. He leads Grace to her room on the top floor, gives her a kiss on the forehead, telling her he's really proud of her. But then the kicker comes when he leaves Grace's room, and Verity then quietly visits the room that Andy just left. She walks to the door. The childish paintings on the door we see that were hung there when Andy approached it with Grace are no longer there. And opening the door, Verity enters a room that looks completely different from how Andy sees it. Paints, easels, drawings, a sewing mannequin are in the room. The floor is completely covered with a drop cloth often used in an artist studio, and gone is any side of Grace, including her bed and her furniture. And an onion sandwich is on the floor covered with maggots. Verity looks around and says, is somebody in here? And it appears that Grace might have actually never existed, and that is the way this episode ends. So, yeah, guys, like I said, this show in general, they've done a lot of really big twists between, Angela turning out to be Regan, and then Angela getting possessed and things like that. I thought that was very well done, and I really didn't think the show was going to top it. I'm like, there's no way they're going to top that amazing twist in season 1. This might have done it, honestly. This might have done it, because at least in The Exorcist, you had to have made the connection that this is in the same universe and that this definitely did happen again. So there was always a possibility they could do something like that. Like we could still see Regan as an adult. That is definitely something they could have done. You still could have thought that was a possibility. I don't think anyone ever thought of something like this happening. I certainly didn't expect this to happen, but this really changes everything. But it makes so much sense too, because if you think about it, Grace is a character who has she shared scenes with? Andy. Who's the only person who has seen her? Andy. That's it. Nobody else has interacted with Grace. She hasn't had a scene with Rose. She hasn't had a scene with Verity. It makes sense why she doesn't want to hang out with the other kids, because she's not real. Grace isn't an actual person. And there are one of two things that could be going on here. One, Andy is definitely in the process of getting possessed. I think that's very well could be what's going on. That this again is very similar to what happened with Captain Howdy or The Stranger, where this child is luring him in and it's going to try to, possess him, and that's kind of what's going on, and that is the she that they were talking about. I mean, sure, Maria is the she as well, but I think, Grace could very well be that spirit, or because of Andy's grief, it's just gone so bad to the point where he's imagining what could have been him and Nicole's child. At least that's what I'm thinking that this could be, that maybe this could have been their child and they could have had this life together. Or it could be something completely different. I don't know, honestly, but it makes so much sense as to what's going on here. And honestly, I would not be surprised if Andy's been possessed this entire time, because he hasn't believed a single thing they've said. He's shut down every theory possible. What if all this time it wasn't that Andy wasn't believing them, but it was actually that Andy was possessed the whole time? And if that's the case, it actually makes a lot of sense. Why else would these birds be coming here? Why else would he be imagining this, girl that doesn't exist? Why else would he be shutting down every one of Shelby's theories? Why else would he be, pinning the blame on Caleb, pinning the blame on, pinning the blame on Verity. It makes so much sense as to what's going on here now, and I really did enjoy that. But I also really love the backstory we got here. We find out a lot more about Verity, that she and Nicole had this really great relationship, and it seemed like she wants to kind of replicate that with Harper, and maybe they're actually going to have this really great connection here, and I definitely did enjoy seeing that. Verity's a character who Brianna Hildebrand's been doing a great job, but she hasn't exactly had a lot to do up until this point. And now that she does, I think definitely Verity's a lot more instrumental in the story than we assume she was, and that's something I'm definitely interested in getting into, is what's really going on with Verity here. I think all that's definitely very interesting, and Father Tomas could sense that there's something going on. Marcus and Tomas, they know there's definitely some sort of demonic presence on the island, and it very well could be the caretaker of this home. It really could be, and I would not be surprised if that's what's going on here. And it makes sense too, because everything seems to be just working out. Harper, she's situated in everything. She's really happy where she is. Rose and Andy are getting a lot closer. It seems like they're going to start a relationship. Tomas and Marcus have this great mutual understanding. So it only makes sense for the show to pull out the rug and explain, yeah, this is actually what's been going on the whole time. That girl that you've been seeing, yeah, she's actually not real, and I think that's just an incredible twist, and I can't wait to see where the show goes with that. There are just so many places they can really take that, and as far as Mouse, she clearly does have some sort of connection to Marcus and Father Tomas. I don't know what that's really going to be all about, but it's clear that they haven't contacted Bennett. Bennett hasn't contacted them, so I think that really is going to be a problem. I mean, is she right when she says that the Exorcists, are no more? Is she right when she's saying that they're not going to win this time? Or should he really even be trusting Mouse? I mean, a part of me thinks that maybe he can't fully trust her. I don't really know. I'm interested in seeing really what's actually going to happen there, but in general, guys, I don't even want to try to theorize, because I'm probably wrong. I'm probably wrong as to what's actually going on. There are so many possibilities for where they can really take this story. I mean, this is really something that we saw nothing like this in season 1, and that's something I definitely really do love. We never really saw a story like this. I mean, sure, there's still Exorcist, and yes, there are really just so many places that they can take this twist, and that's something I definitely am very excited to see what really does happen here. And of course, every time the show does something big, they have to go on hiatus, and I will admit this is definitely the best time to do it, because this will get people theorizing, this will get people to, if they're not, caught up, they can get caught up because there's only 4 episodes. I totally understand that, but it really pisses me off that after such an awesome twist like this, we have to wait a week, maybe even 2, which really does suck, unfortunately. But either way, guys, this was an incredible episode. The twist alone was absolutely worth it. This was easily the best episode of the season, and I am definitely going to give The Exorcist Season 2, Episode 4, One for Sorrow, in A-. So over, guys, for this episode of The Exorcist. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Left your thoughts in it. Absolutely loving this season. Really just very interested in seeing where they go now, because I was very worried that this was going to be like a retread of sorts, and it really seems like they're taking this in a completely different direction, and I am so happy to see that. But that's it, my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.